the Halvenar Concord had been humanity's closest ally for 63 years, right up until the moment they weren't. It happened on the fourth day of the Battle of Corvus Reach. In a moment that would be studied, dissected, and mourned for generations afterward. The Halvenar Third Fleet, positioned to reinforce humanity's overextended line against the advancing Threk Dominion, simply turned and withdrew, ceding an entire flank of the battle without warning, without explanation, and without so much as a final transmission to the human commanders, who had moments before been coordinating joint strategy with their Halvenar counterparts as trusted side partners. 14,000 human personnel died in the collapse that followed. 3 colony worlds, stripped of the defense the Halvenar withdrawal had guaranteed on paper, fell to Threk occupation within the week. And humanity, for the first time in its 63-year partnership with the Halvenar Concord, learned exactly how little that partnership had actually meant. Admiral Renata Voss had commanded the human Second Fleet at Corvus Reach, and she had watched, in real time, as ships she had trained alongside, officers she had shared meals with, allies she had trusted with the lives of her own crew, simply vanished from the battle at the precise moment their presence mattered most. "Get me a channel to Halvenar Fleet Command," she'd ordered, voice remarkably level, given the chaos unfolding across her tactical display. "I want to know what in God's name just happened." The response, when it finally came, 6 hours later, 6 hours in which the battle had already been lost, in which 14,000 of her people had already died, was not an explanation, it was not even an apology. It was a terse diplomatic statement, delivered through official channels, citing a reassessment of strategic priorities and expressing regret for any operational inconvenience the withdrawal may have caused. Voss read the statement 3 times before setting it down, and in the silence of her command deck, surrounded by officers who had just watched friends and colleagues die because an ally had decided, apparently, that the partnership wasn't worth the cost anymore, she made a promise to herself that she would carry for the rest of the war. "We will remember exactly what this cost us. And we will make sure they remember it too." The investigation that followed, conducted jointly by Earth's Unified Defense Council and a furious, grieving public that demanded answers, took 4 months to uncover what had actually happened at Corvus Reach. And the truth, when it finally emerged, was more damning than even the angriest voices in the council chamber had initially suspected. The Halvenar Concord had not withdrawn from Corvus Reach out of tactical necessity, nor confusion, nor any of the more forgivable explanations the initial diplomatic statement had implied. They had withdrawn because, in secret negotiations conducted in the weeks leading up to the battle, Halvenar leadership had struck a private deal with the Threk Dominion €1 that traded humanity's exposed flank at Corvus Reach for a promise of Threk non-aggression toward Halvenar territory, a promise that would allow the Concord to consolidate its own borders while humanity absorbed the full weight of the Threk Dominion's expanding war machine. It was, in the coldest possible terms, a betrayal calculated with careful, deliberate precision, not a moment of panic or miscalculation, but a decision made in full awareness of exactly what it would cost the ally the Halvenar Concord abandoned. President Diego Alvarez addressed the nation, and by extension every human colony across 17 star systems, in a speech that would be remembered as one of the defining moments of his presidency. "For 63 years, we treated the Halvenar Concord as family," he said. "We shared our technology with them, we fought beside them. We buried our people alongside theirs in 3 separate wars, believing, as any reasonable ally would believe, that the bond we had built meant something beyond convenience. We have learned, at a cost of 14,000 lives, exactly how wrong that belief was." He paused, and in that pause, the entire watching world understood that what came next would define humanity's response for years, perhaps decades, to come. "We will not declare war on the Halvenar Concord," Alvarez continued. "We are not interested in becoming the kind of civilization that answers betrayal with the same casual disregard for life that was shown to us, but I promise you this. The Concord will learn, in full, exactly what it costs to treat an ally as expendable. And they will learn it not through our anger, but through our patience." What followed was not, by any conventional definition, a war. There was no declaration, no invasion fleet, no dramatic confrontation of the kind that had characterized humanity's prior conflicts with the Threk Dominion, or, in earlier decades, with the Zerath Ascendancy. Instead, over the following 11 years, humanity waged something far quieter, and ultimately far more devastating. A systematic, patient dismantling of every advantage the Halvenar Concord had ever gained from its alliance with Earth. Dr. Wen Li, who had spent the better part of 2 decades leading the joint human-Halvenar research initiative that had produced some of the Concord's most valuable valid technologicals, ACO, resigned from the program the day the Corvus Reach investigation concluded. Along with the 63 other human scientists, who had staffed it, they built half their fleet's propulsion systems on technology we shared with them in good faith. Li told the Defense Council, presenting a detailed accounting of exactly how deeply the Halvenar Concord's military, military and economic infrastructure had come to depend on human contributions over 6 decades of partnership. Their agricultural yield on 3 of their outer colonies depends on terraforming techniques we developed. Their trade network, the one propping up their entire economic position among the Covenant species, runs almost entirely through logistics infrastructure we built and continue to maintain. You're suggesting we withdraw all of it, said Councilwoman Priya Advani. I'm suggesting, Li said, that we let them discover, over time, exactly how much of what they consider their own strength was actually ours all along. The withdrawal, when it came, was neither sudden nor dramatic, a deliberate choice, made explicitly to avoid the appearance of vindictive retaliation that might justify further Halvenar aggression. Instead, human technical advisors simply began, quietly and gradually, declining to renew the cooperative agreements that had underpinned 6 decades of shared development. Trade routes, that had run through human-built logistic infrastructure, found themselves subject to new, entirely legal tariffs and inspection requirements that slowed Halvenar commerce to a crawl. Joint research initiatives dissolved, one by one, their human participants reassigned to purely domestic projects, taking with them decades of accumulated expertise the Concord had never bothered to develop independently, having grown comfortable relying on human contribution instead. It took the Halvenar Concord nearly 3 years to fully understand what was happening to them, and by the time they did, the damage had already metastasized, far beyond anything a simple diplomatic apology could repair. High Counselor Yavesh Kal, who had ascended to Halvenar leadership in the political chaos that followed the Corvus Reach scandal, found himself, 3 years into his term, presiding over an economy, in genuine crisis Euros colonies, struggling with terraforming systems that had begun failing, without human technical support, to maintain them, a military increasingly unable to source replacement parts for propulsion systems built on technology the Concord had never learned to manufacture independently, and a trade network collapsing under the weight of logistics infrastructure that had quietly, legally, become far less accommodating to Halvenar shipping. We need to reopen negotiations with Earth. Cal told his own council, the frustration in his voice evident even through the careful diplomatic language of Halvenar political discourse. Whatever grievance they hold against us, we cannot continue absorbing losses of this magnitude. They have not attacked us, pointed out Councillor Dresh Van, one of the architects of the original Threk deal that had triggered the crisis. They have simply stopped helping us. There is no violation of Covenant law in refusing further cooperation. That is precisely the problem. Cal snapped. If they had attacked us, we could rally the Covenant's other members against them for an unprovoked act of aggression. Instead, they have done nothing but quietly withdraw exactly what we never should have depended on in the first place. And there is no court, no arbitration council, no diplomatic mechanism in existence that can compel an ally to keep helping you after you have betrayed them. We built our entire strength on a foundation we never controlled. And now that foundation is gone, and we have no one to blame but ourselves. The delegation Cal sent to Earth 6 months later, requesting formal renewal of cooperative agreements, was received not with anger, nor with the kind of retributive satisfaction that might have characterized a less disciplined response, but with something the Halvenar diplomats found, in its own way, more unsettling than open hostility. polite, unhurried indifference. We appreciate the Concord's interest in renewed cooperation. President Alvarez's successor, President Marcus Webb, told the delegation, in a meeting that lasted less than 20 minutes, "Our position remains what it has been for the past 3 years. We are not interested in punishing the Halvenar Concord, nor in prolonging any grievance beyond what is necessary. We are simply no longer interested in a partnership that has demonstrated, through its own actions, exactly how little it values the lives of those who depend on it. You are welcome to develop your own technological and economic independence, as any sovereign civilization should. We simply no longer intend to provide it for you." The Halvenar Concord's decline, once it began in earnest, proved impossible to fully arrest. Without human technical support, 3 outer colonies experienced agricultural collapse within the decade, forcing costly, disruptive population relocations that strained the Concord's economy for a generation. The military, having never developed independent manufacturing capability for propulsion systems it had spent decades importing, rather than building, found itself falling steadily behind other Covenant species who had maintained more balanced, self-sufficient development throughout the same period. Trade routes that had once made the Concord a significant economic power among the Covenant's member species, withered as logistics costs, no longer subsidized by generous human infrastructure, made Halvenar commerce steadily less competitive. It was not destruction, in the sense of conquest or annihilation. The Halvenar Concord survived, diminished but intact, its population never directly harmed by anything resembling military action. But it survived as a shadow of the regional power it had been in the years before Corvus Reach. Euros, a cautionary example, studied across the Covenant of Silent Stars, of exactly what happened to a civilization that mistook an ally's generosity for weakness, and discovered, far too late, precisely how much of its own strength had never truly belonged to it at all. Admiral Renata Voss, retired now and living out her later years on a quiet coastal settlement on Earth, was asked once, by a young historian compiling an oral record of the Corvus Reach betrayal and its aftermath, whether she felt satisfied by how humanity's response had ultimately unfolded. She considered the question for a long moment before answering. "Satisfied isn't the word I'd use," she said. 14,000 people died, because an ally decided our lives were worth less than a peace deal with our enemy. No amount of economic decline on their part brings any of those people back. But I'll tell you what we did accomplish, and what I think matters more than satisfaction ever could. We showed every species in the Covenant, watching the whole thing unfold, over 11 quiet years, exactly what happens when you betray someone who built half your strength for you. We didn't need to fire a single shot. We simply stopped being generous, and let the consequences of their own choices do the rest." She paused, looking out at a calm, ordinary ocean that had seen 63 years of alliance and 11 years of quiet, devastating consequence pass over it, without ever once losing its patience. "That's not vengeance," she said finally. "That's just what happens when you take an ally's loyalty for granted, and that ally finally decides to stop giving it to you for free." The lesson, in the decades that followed, was not lost on the rest of the Covenant of Silent Stars. No other member species, in the long history that followed the Halvenar Concord's quiet decline, ever again mistook humanity's patience for weakness or humanity's generosity for an obligation that could be discarded without cost.